begin. Lord, we worship you and thank you so much for your love and your grace and the hope that you give us. As we see these storm clouds move into Yankton here, it's a nice thing to see the rain, but it is a reminder that it gets dark in some places, Lord, but you are the light of the world, and you've made us that as well. So help us to have hope in our hearts in spite of all that is happening. Lord God, we hope in you. We know, we have seen with our spiritual eyes and our heart what you will do during the time to come, and we can't wait. But until then, Lord God, encourage us and those we know. In Jesus' precious name, amen. All right, let's start with some good news. 92% of Bible users say Scripture has transformed their life. Anybody here? Yeah, I bet it's 100% here. Somebody's joking with me back there, but within the group of Bible users, those who said they interacted with the Bible at least 3 to 4 times, look at this, a year, 92% answered in the affirmative when it asked if the message of the Bible has transformed my life. Just 8% said otherwise. By a contrast, the majority of respondents who did not meet the criteria designated as a Bible user, 62% did not see the message of the Bible as a source of transformation in their life, while 38% did. So in other words, if you're not a Bible user, but you maybe look at it every once in a while, it's not going to transform your life. But if you are a Bible user, it seems to 92% say it will transform your life. It is the Word of God. It is living and active and sharper than any two-edged, double-edged sword. Let's get through some quick headlines here. Biden is in Delaware during the campaign season, question mark. He's there 25% of his time so far in office. He's in Delaware. The prior president said he did not have the energy, and it seems like maybe that's the case. GOP is making up ground. It seems like in some areas in a big way. We'll see what happens. Georgia has a record early turnout. So this will be interesting to say the least. That can be either good or bad. I mean, duh. But early turnouts are usually bad for Republicans. But we'll see if somebody's just sick and tired of what's happening in office now. So we'll see. Liz Truss is in record short term as she's out. Actually, she had a record short term as the Prime Minister of England, of the UK. She is out after about 6 weeks. She promoted some things to try to help her economy, and it hurt everybody, and so she's out very quickly. I just got the word that Prime Minister Johnson is not going to make a run. He came back. He was in the Caribbean or something on vacation and went back to the UK as people were saying, hey, you got a shot to go back, but he just bowed out just about an hour or two ago. Pfizer government deal is about to expire. So they're going to triple their vaccine cost to $120, or approximately $120. So Canada bans new handgun sales effective last Friday. No more handguns can be bought in the territory of Canada, which is just weird and very strange. Sign of things to come. We'll see. Top automakers will spend $1.2 trillion dollars on a push for electric vehicles. 200 people died in fighting in South Sudan over tribal and land dispute. South Sudan is still in a mess, which again is Kush, or a major section of Kush, and that whole area is in chaos. Libya is still in chaos as well. We haven't talked about those two areas in a while. Israel attacks Hezbollah army targets after a month of silence. For 1 month, they didn't do anything in Syria. And then finally, they came out and attacked a major target around the Damascus area. And I saw a report I'm going to follow up on, because I'm not going to officially report it. I am going to mention it. Does that make sense? but I got to follow up on it because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But Israel is reporting that they have destroyed 90% of Iranian infrastructure in Syria. 90%. And that seems awful high because I've seen several reports saying that they're getting ahead all the while Israel is targeting their munitions. So we're going to follow that up, but keep that in the back of your skull there. Israel's Supreme Court upholds the Lebanese maritime deal. So it's so far so good. They have elections coming up. We're going to see what the new PM and the cabinet does there. Russia warns the world Ukraine is about to use a dirty bomb. That's probably one of the biggest lies on the planet right now. But Russia always does that kind of stuff, and then they go do it. In Syria, in Syria they were known for this. They backed up the Syrians, and they're saying, hey, these guys are going to use chemical weapons. The United States is going to use chemical weapons and all this. And next thing you know, they're dropping chemical weapons, barrel bombs and phosphorus bombs and stuff. So Russia is known for playing this game. And then on the flip side, Ukraine warns the world Russia is about to blow up a huge dam. This water is at least 100 feet deep. The wall is 100 feet high, and it's 2 miles long, the watershed. So it would be absolutely devastating if they did that. I don't know where they're getting that intel, but that's coming out of there. Just real quick update. We're not going to talk about Ukraine a lot today, but Russia is they've taken out a bunch of the electrical grid right as winter is coming. And people are very, very concerned about staying warm through the winter. I think the Ukrainians are going to be okay because they know how to live there. That's their home. The forces in Russia are going to, out of Russia in Ukraine, are going to have a difficult time in Ukrainian land during the winter. They don't have housing. They're going to have to steal it. They don't have, if Ukrainians don't have electricity, neither does Russia. We're going to have to wait and see how this continues to play out. I will still say this. I'm just as a thought here. Biblically, it seems like Russia will win this, but if they don't win it, it just sets back some timing that you and I would think, well, they're going to take Ukraine and keep going. Some people have pointed out the fact that Ukraine, even though it seems like it's west, and it is a little bit west, actually it's south. And it's right at the Black Sea, on the north side of the Black Sea. So that's a move south for them. And that's important. We're not going to talk about Azerbaijan and Armenia and Iran too much tonight. Iran some. But there's some skirmishes again in those regions. Iran and Azerbaijan are at it again. Iran is threatening Azerbaijan. They're doing exercises on each other's borders, and so the whole Caucasus area is a mess. So you think again. I mean, week after week after week, we say this, that those states that are supposed to be coming down against Israel are the disaster. Every one of them are a complete mess right now. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Some interesting news. In Mosul, which is northern Iraq, which is old Nineveh, okay? ISIS did some major damage there, and so the authorities came in and said, well, we need to dig this up and fix things or whatever. And they unearthed some architecture here. Look at this, and this, they have reliefs like this that they've already taken out of Iraq, and some are stored in even London and other places, Germany. There's another relief that they found, and the Assyrians were well known for their bow and arrow capabilities. So there's a relief there. There's another relief, and then there's two more kind of side by side. So they just unearthed these, and they have. They said they go back to 2,700 years, which is the time of Sennacherib. So interesting stuff. At the same time, as they're digging that stuff up in Iraq, northern Iraq, You might remember that when ISIS had much of Syria and other places, they were destroying everything. That is one thing about ISIS. Any kind of gods, any kind of anything that had nothing to do with Allah, they're going to kill you. They're going to destroy your stuff. And so they destroyed this pagan temple. And we announced this several years ago when it happened. Well, Syria and Russia signed an agreement to rebuild it. Why would you want to rebuild it? As a side note, you remember that they made a copy of, I can't remember if it's this one or another one, and they went around the world and they showed up over here in several of the states of the Northeast. Remember we showed that? Just pagan architecture and Baal worship. A prayer alert, radical Islamists behead 20 Christians in the Congo. This is just one of many reports. Again, in Nigeria the other day, a bunch of Christians were killed. It's just really devastating in portions of Africa. The civil war has heightened, raised its ugly head to a greater extent again in Ethiopia and some other places down south there as well. So Africa is just a real mess in a lot of ways. And yet, France wants it back, Russia wants it, Turkey wants it, Iran wants it, and the West wants to help save it. It's a real mess. There's a lot of oil there, and of course we care about the people. Now watch this, hypocrisy. Israeli premier calls Australia's flip-flop on Jerusalem recognition a wretched move. So we had a conservative prime minister in Australia prior to the one we have. They said we're going to move to the embassy to Jerusalem. And then this current prime minister and their cabinet or the parliament said, nope, we're not. We're taking back that promise. So Lapid is saying, you guys, that's a wretched move. But watch this. A record number of Jews visit the Temple Mount over the holidays, which is cool. And this keeps going up. Year after year, the numbers keep going up, a record number. And I don't know if we've showed a video here or two, but see the crowd? I mean, just lots and lots, tens of thousands of Jews visiting the Temple Mount over the holidays. But watch what Lapid says. The same guy who went down on Australia there. Lapid tells Arab media he will protect Muslim prayer on the Temple Mount and not allow Jewish prayer. So, you should move your embassy to Jerusalem, but we're not going to let our people pray on their most sacred, place on the planet. Now, again, you and I as Christians, we have to be careful. I think this is a good thing to keep in front of us. We need to be careful. Let me tell you a story once. When I got out of the Air Force under what I would call terrible circumstances, not with the Air Force. Me and the Air Force got along. I had a great career. I didn't want to get out. But it was time to leave. So I got out and went back to Oregon and was saying, okay, Lord, I'm not going to move until you move me. And we have a mountain there called Saddle Mountain. And I just said, you know what, I'm gonna take that long walk I haven't done in a long time, and I'm gonna go up that mountain, which is quite high, and a good walk, and I'm gonna just, pray and just spend the day. Well, first of all, I forgot how long that walk was up there. And second of all, when I got up halfway, it was foggy. I couldn't see within 15 feet of my face, and it was starting to drizzle, and it was getting really cold. Now, I don't know if the Lord was talking to me or, you got to be careful about hearing words, but it was just like this, you got to be on top of a mountain to serve the Lord? You got to be on top of a mountain to praise Him and worship Him? So I said, I don't have to go up there. So I waited for a sunny day. I turned around and went back. But they don't have to go up on the Temple Mount, do they? And we don't. And again, we got to be careful because remember, they used to say when God left, they said, well, we still have the temple. The Ark of the Covenant was gone. We still have the temple. And then what did the Lord do? He took the temple away. So they're in a bad place with this, but we're just showing the hypocrisy of the government. And I'm sure the Lord is not happy with either of them, but especially the government who knows better. The Portland mayor, Portland, Oregon, mayor proposes a ban on unsanctioned homeless encampments, calls a crisis a humanitarian catastrophe. Now, look at the camps there. And we've been talking about this. You've seen it in the news. That we don't really have to report this. But Portland did this. Portland allowed this. And now they're saying it's a humanitarian catastrophe. Now, you know what's happening? And you've seen this, I'm sure, on Fox News. Fox News is big on this one. The Democrats are coming out and saying, we love the police. And we want to fund them. And of course, you know, we need this and we need that. In fact, some other people who were in trouble, they were afraid for their lives. So they said, you know, I need the police to secure my life here. Well, you fired some of them, you know. So I don't know if I want to secure you or your life or not. But the point is that they're eating their words. This is coming back on them in a big way. It is going to be very interesting what happens in November, actually next week, right? A week and a few days. So please vote. Everybody, please vote. And then what happens in 2024. So we're going to keep this on our scope here. Charlie Victor 019, the CDC has added it to their vaccine regime. This is telling the governments and the schools the kids need to be vaccinated. Now what happens? It's going to be up to the governments and the schools to whether they're going to add it to the regime of the state or the district. And so write your congressman. I don't think we have to worry too much with Kristi Noem and those kinds of things, but districts are going to start adding this, and they're going to get to the point where they're going to say, listen, your kid can't go to school unless they have this vaccine. That's coming. And by the way, we just told you, it's triple, the cost for that vaccine has gone up 3 times. I don't think, you know, if I took a class, money class, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it had to do with percentages and, you know, the more gasoline that you're selling, the price comes down, that kind of thing. They've got all these vaccines going out, and they're going to triple the cost. Makes no sense. They made record amount of money, and their prices are going up 3 times. Makes no sense. So I want to remind you what the book of Revelation says, that he's going to call these pharmacies, pharmakia, the sorcery to task when he comes back. So lawyers are preparing to sue any state that requires a Charlie Vector 19 vaccination to attend a school. And so we hope this is the case and they take this to court. We hope that some of the governments of our states will change as we go forward here. There's a lot riding on it. Boston University creates a new COVID strain that has an 80% kill rate. Yes, you read it right. They're still playing with the COVID strain. Now, I've never understood this. Why don't they kill this stuff off? Why do the governments of the world say, we're going to kill this stuff off, and if you don't, we're going to sanction you, we're going to do whatever, I don't know, whatever. But we're not going to play with this stuff. But they are, because you know why they are? Because they don't want somebody else to get ahead of them. Like, you know, if you come up with something, you know, we want to come up with something. It's like the nuke. We've got nukes, now you got a nuke. Now we got a hydrogen bomb, you got a hydrogen bomb. Now we got a bigger hydrogen bomb, and so the whole thing. We got lasers, now you got lasers. It's that whole thing continues to go on. And the governments of the world allow it. I want to remind you also that Revelation says Jesus is coming to judge those peoples who would destroy the earth. That's a quote. They're destroying the earth. So he's coming to judge them. Bird flu kills a record number of poultry in the U.S., 47 million. The record is near record. The record is 50.5 million in 2015. The meat and egg prices are going to reflect this. And this, on top of the supply chain problems that we already have, the droughts that we already have, and all this stuff that is happening, this stuff just keeps going. We remember the poultry and meat plants that burned down, a couple dozen of them last year. So this stuff continues to happen, and it's just really weird. Officials are finding the subtype in a broader range of wild birds, such as ducks, than in the past, and it seems to live in the birds longer. An elevated threat for infections may persist until summer of 2023. So isn't it interesting? You know, you want to blame the devil, or you want to blame somebody, or God, what are you doing? God says, I will send pestilences on lands that defy me and my word. So we don't know exactly totally what's going on, but the thought about there's more of it and it's lasting longer is very, very concerning. Then there's our president. And I haven't shown too many of these clips, but I'm going to show two of them tonight. You can see that Schumer is shaking his hand there, right? He's shaking the president's hand. He shakes his hand. Now look at the president. Watch him. And they show this, and they show a close-up of his face. He's going like this, and then he doesn't understand. And again, it looks kind of funny. You want to kind of laugh, but it's actually scary. Now that was some time ago, and there's many of those out there. This is just the other day. Turns around, there's nobody there. I don't know if he's saluting somebody. I don't know what he was doing, but there's nobody. By the way, there's no crowd there. It's a very scary situation that we are in right here. He did say yesterday that he's unequivocally running for the presidency in 2024. His wife wants him to. They have work undone. So that's where we're at with that. You need to get out and vote. Let's talk about the ESG situation again. I want to remind you of the ESG issue, that these big companies, BlackRock, what's the one that starts with a V? Can't remember. These 3 or 4 major companies in particular, but then a bunch of them are coming in with trillions of dollars. And they're setting up a strategy to say, listen, we're going to promote you, we're going to help you, we're going to give you loans, we're going to do whatever you need, but you got to abide by these cultural and social rules, governmental. So energy, social, and governmental rules, ESG. And if you don't, you can't be a part of this. And this is huge. This is a big deal. The Republicans are taking them on. They're finally getting out there and saying, okay, we got to fight this. And Louisiana is pulling out of BlackRock, and Vanguard is the other one, Vanguard, and some others, Fidelity, some others. So Louisiana's pulling out, and I've heard some other states are going after some of these people too, as well. We'll see. It's going to take a lot. They've got so much money. So BlackRock and Vanguard are taking over centralized food production technologies and will have a near total control over the future food supply in America. The top 3 shareholders of CD Industry Holdings, the world's largest fertilizer company, include both BlackRock and Vanguard, are also the top shareholders in Union Pacific Railroad, the railroad giant that moves the fertilizer and other agriculture inputs all across the country. The world's top 10 food companies are also largely owned by both these companies. These include Nestle, PepsiCo, General Mills, Kellogg's, Associated British Foods, Mars, and some others here. What happens when they control all the seeds, produce, and meat too? What happens when produce and meat are all grown inside secure facilities after a gene splice or inside a Petri dish, and farmland becomes dormant due to overreaching regulations, lack of supplies, and manufactured inflation? Now, I understand that this writer is probably reaching on some of this stuff, especially that last paragraph or two. They're reaching some. But the point is that they've got way too much power, and they are overreaching, they are using it, and they are controlling people, agencies. They have to abide by a list, like I said, of cultural, energy, and governmental issues before they can get helped out by these companies. And if they continue, if they're allowed to continue, it could be very devastating. Along with that devastation to our culture and society and economics, China has 13,000, almost 500 development projects worth almost $900 billion employed in 165 countries worldwide. And we've known this for some time, but I went back and looked at that article that you pointed me to there, Joe. And that's what they have there. So all around, and you can see where most of them are, a bunch of them along the ports. But I want you to look at this map. And again, this is another one we haven't talked about in a while. The Belt and Road Initiative for China is to basically not maybe own, but control everything from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And that includes the road. That's the road initiative, and railroads we're talking about as well up there. Major railroads going through Afghanistan and other places like that, where, by the way, they're very resource rich. And then along the ports. And I want to remind you that China, although they have the largest navy in the world now, they still do not have the largest blue water fleet. They don't have a huge nuke fleet. They can't make it around the world. They can't just keep going like much of some of Russia and the United States in particular can do. So what they're doing is they're coming in with these deals and say, hey, listen, you poor countries, we want to help you out. We'll give you loans. We'll come in and build this. All you got to do is sign this paper. And they end up losing control of ports. Singapore was the first largest port. It was a huge sign to the world. Wait a minute, they just took control of Sri Lanka, some ports in Sri Lanka, Singapore, and others, where some of the largest gas refineries in the world are. I want to remind you that while the oil and gas is coming out of the ground in the Middle East, in Russia in particular, the refineries, some of the biggest refineries, are actually in South Korea, Singapore, and other places. So they ship the oil over there, they refine it there so that Asia can have gasoline. So that's how it works. They got to get the oil over there to China. And China is doing a bunch of stuff now. I mean, huge. So Xi just announced his third term a couple days ago. And this is unprecedented. It's the third 5-year term. But basically, he's taken control. And they did some things in the Constitution here recently. And so basically, he's taking control here. And the other day, he didn't, like Saddam Hussein and some others, when they took control, you saw some people let out and then they disappeared. Stalin did that, others did that. Well, the same thing is kind of happening here. See this elderly gentleman here? He's a moderate, and I think, I think this is a video here. No, maybe not. I didn't give you a video. But what he did was, he's sitting down next to Xi, and this older gentleman, and then two guys come up behind him, put their shoulder and said, please follow me. And so Xi's looking, and this guy's talking, hey, what's going on? And then you can see, as he's walking out, he turns to talk to Xi. Xi says something, and then the elder gentleman leaves. And then two more men were escorted out behind him. Now, we don't know if they're going to disappear, but basically this is the same thing, where Xi is taking command. They're calling him the new Mao, and he's doubling down on basically ruling the world, really. He's tired of the West, and he wants to rule the world. China continues a zero tolerance for COVID lockdowns. They locked down 1 million people near iPhone factory, along with public discontent. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg predict a growth of just 3% this year, the second weakest pace in more than 4 decades. The city reported 6 new local cases. Only 6 new local cases for Sunday in a town of 1 million or more people. Nationwide cases declined to 700 in the nation of China, 700, the lowest in 2 weeks as outbreaks in Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang, I think it is, came under control. Beijing posted 13 new cases and Shanghai had 32. So Zion and others are saying, how are these people going to make it? They keep shutting down everything. Their economy, everybody's saying their economy is in collapse. Of course, we've talked about their demographics. And yet, Xi has taken over and look for some huge moves to be made. So I had a couple clips of Peter, but I just thought I would just do this. Listen, he says this: China does the brain work. Now he's talking about chips here, by using the high-end chips and putting them into their own software. They can't make high-end chips. They're buying them from other countries. If you can't get high-end chips, then those high-end industries shrivel on the vine and go away. So more than anything else that happened in the world to this point, this new step of restrictions threatened to throw the Chinese into a technological winter, and any concerns you have about China and its rise can be killed just by that. And that's before you consider energy, food, political dysfunction, i.e. the COVID issue, or the Ukraine war, or demographics. So we are now, watch what he says, we are now at the end of China's technological rise, and the question now is, how fast is the fall? Now, I like Peter, okay? I really like him. I think he's a very good analyst. I'm not sure he's a good prognosticator, okay? We haven't lived long enough and haven't learned enough from him, haven't spent enough time with him to see if he's good at future telling, okay? We're going to have to wait to see if this plays out. The point here is, though, this. China can't make chips. They make chips for some TVs and some phones and some other low-end stuff, but they can't do the high-end stuff. Taiwan does 80 to 90% of the high-end stuff, the real superconductor stuff, and they, 80 to 90%. If they get Taiwan intact, they go a long, long way up. The United States, he says, does a bunch of the moderate to high-end stuff. We do he called us #1 in the world, as far as I think that's in general. That may be the case, but we don't do the superconductor stuff like Taiwan does. So it's going to be very interesting. And by the way, these factories take about 10 years to build. You can't just build one overnight. So for them to take Taiwan now, I think is important to them, and it's just something we're going to have to watch. So Blinken the other day, I don't trust this guy either, but the military and the Secretary of State and everybody is saying, Blinken says China wants to seize Taiwan on a much faster timeline. And that would be devastating, especially now that you see, wait till you see what the Heritage Foundation says about our military. Now, I did not know this. This is really interesting. The Groningen gas field is a natural gas field in Groningen, I think that's how you say it, Groningen province, in the northeastern part of the Netherlands, in Europe, with an estimated 2.74 billion cubic meters of recoverable natural gas. It is the largest natural gas field in Europe and one of the largest in the world. The gas field was discovered in 1959. By the way, so was I. Due to tremors, that began some 20 years ago and continued, most not noticeable except by use of seismic equipment and the most intense being a couple measured at 4.0, the field has all but shut down because of the fear of future earthquakes. Therefore, the region is desperate for fuel and has recently returned to burning coal, even lignite coal, one of the dirtiest fuels known to man. The article said that they could supply Europe all by themselves for the next, I can't remember how many years, 200 years or something. They could do it themselves. So I think that the Netherlands ought to hire me. I think I ought to be the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. If President or Prime Minister. And, or Secretary of Energy. Okay. And Sonia's waving at me. See you later. She says, see you later. And just for a day, right? So we go over there, right? And we go to this little place and we say, listen, gas is at, let's say, you know, what? $5, $6, $7. Okay, tell you what we're going to do. Everybody who lives within that big green spot, we're going to give them $1 million each. And you're going to go buy whatever you want. If you want $1.5 million, I don't care. Go buy a resort somewhere. Go live somewhere. And if you want to stay here, fine. Sign the paper. We're going to open up this so we can save Europe. Open it up. Do what it takes for the security of the nation. But they knew this back in 1959, and they've been shutting it down, and Russia has held them hostage for at least the past decade, and probably longer. The world's in a mess right now because of this kind of stuff. Now, let me say this. I understand earthquakes. I understand those fears. I can tell you right now that in western Texas and in Oklahoma and New Mexico and Southern California, the earth is quaking a little bit because of fracking. I know that's a fact. I understand that. But what are we going to do? We're not going to solar panels anytime soon. So Biden, on this whole energy thing now, Biden delays the military meetings with the Middle East allies amid an escalating Iranian threat. Let's keep going with this. Saudi Arabia is investing $1 trillion, if I remember the amount right, in mining resources. They invested, they're going to invest that in the coming years. And also, it was just announced today that they want to be a world hub for exporting energy and supplies and goods. They want to be a hub for the world. Okay, so they're going to put another tons of money, just a bunch of money in that. Along with that, the Linear City has just started. NEOM has started, 1,600-foot wall, 105 miles long, mirrored city, and there's the beginning of that. That is starting. NEOM, Saudi Arabia sentences tribesmen to death for resisting displacement. This is not the first time. This has been happening for a while. They are going into these areas, basically as government domain, but they're actually killing people. If they don't move, if they go against the government, people have died. So this is horrendous. It's a horrible thing, but it is happening. While all that is happening, Biden, come on, man. I need your oil just until November. We remembered what he said to them. The Biden administration is postponing a series of military meetings with allies in the Middle East, stoking concerns in Congress that the United States is shying away from confronting Iran's regional terrorism network. The United States Gulf Cooperation Council Working Group, a regional alliance that includes Saudi Arabia and other Eastern allies, was scheduled to meet on the 17th about improving integrated air and missile defense systems, which has served as a key line of defense for allies against Iranian attacks. The White House National Security Council, however, has decided to delay the meetings amid a standoff between President Joe Biden and Saudi Arabia over oil. The cancellation of these security meetings is believed to be punishment for reduced oil output by the Saudis and OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Export Countries. Now, they're not going to come out and say that, but that's exactly, I believe, what it is. Now, here's what's really interesting. I'm not a prophet either, okay? But I'm simply saying this, that it seems to me with Ezekiel 38 set up, that Saudi Arabia has to turn back away, I would say away from Russia again at some point. And they're going to need the United States arms and military at that point. The United States has no plans to meet the Saudi king at the G20 summit that's coming up either. So today, additional measures are under discussion behind the scenes in the United States. They include export limits to Saudi Arabia, weapon sales limits, and legal monopolies move against OPEC. The Saudis can do business with Biden, but soothing words accompanied by stabs in the back will yield disastrous results and harsh reactions from the U.S. and all oil-consuming nations. So we've been talking for the last several months in particular about the division, and I would say even more than that. We're talking about the division between the east and the west, the left and the right, the red and the blue, and Christians and non-Christians. That is deepened. Now people are in a very crucial time. The United States and OPEC and Saudi Arabia and others are in a very crucial time of making decisions right now. Some people say this can't be fixed. I disagree with that. If you get the right president there, it can be fixed. However, the main way it has to be fixed is to open up our pipelines, open up our reserves, open up the leasing. We need to rely on ourselves. I heard it said also that we have enough oil and gas in our underground to last us at least 200 years. So again, this is foolishness on this president's side of this president. Now, the Saudis, I'm not saying anything good about the Saudis. They are, you can't rely on them either, but that's the deal. We shouldn't be relying on them. So the Saudis come back and say, anybody that challenged the existence of this country and this kingdom, all of us, we are the product of jihad. This is a threat. We are the product of jihad and martyrdom. Saudi Prince Saad Shalim, who is married to one of the granddaughters of the late king, al-Saud, said in a video that posted to Twitter Saturday, that's my message to anybody that thinks it can threaten us. And so you can see that this is getting actually pretty tense between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So on the heels of that, and just two weeks before elections coming up, Biden administration releases another 10 to 15 million barrels of oil from the energy stockpile, and that basically is taking it down to not zero, but almost zero. It's way, way down. I think it's the lowest it's ever been. It's an unprecedented release, continues 2 weeks before the midterms. This is horrible strategy. And, the gas, somebody said, what the gas comes down 8 cents, or it comes down to something like that, and they think that that's going to change people's minds. I believe that's going to be totally misled. Well, along this energy thing, Kyrgyzstan increases its export of oil products to Turkey 4.6 times since January through August. So I want to remind you what's happening here. Turkey is turning to an energy hub, not but an energy hub. It is still a gateway to the West. Russia's going to pump oil down to them. Putin has said, okay, let's put up a hub there, another hub. They already have some pipelines going through there, but now Turkey is about ready to make a bunch of money as well. They already have been making some.
Those tanks on there are on railroad cars.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
The kerosene, they transported 27,000 tons. It went up 27,000 tons. 260%. Yeah. Heavy fuel, $10 million. The supplies of fuel oil leaped 1,100%. So now the question is still going on. Did blowing up the Nord Stream cause Germany to go all in? And I believe it did. So some people are saying that was clearly the move on the United States, and maybe even with Germany's say so. So that's kind of what it seems may have happened. We'll see. This is besides the talk about the death of the Christians and the situation of the church, this is the most devastating news that came out this week. On Tuesday, the Heritage Foundation released its annual U.S. military strength assessment. The conservative think tank gave the overall U.S. military a weak rating. Within the U.S. Marines rated as a strong, the U.S. Army as marginal, the U.S. Navy as weak, and the United States Air Force as very weak. The Navy and the Air Force both fell down. The others didn't change this last year, but the Navy and the Air Force went down. It is rated as weak related to the force needed to defend national interest on a global stage against actual changes in the world as it is rather than as we wish it were, the index said. This is the logical consequence of years of sustained use, underfunding, poorly defined priorities, wildly shifted security policies, exceedingly poor discipline in program execution, and a profound lack of seriousness across the national security establishment, even as the threats to the U.S. interest have surged. The ranking is based on the overall ability to secure victories in two major conflicts at once in different areas of the world. At the moment, the U.S. military may not be able to meet the demands of a single major conflict and would be ill-equipped to handle two, even nearby simultaneous conflicts. This is very bad news for the military. Unlike Ukraine, Russia's industrial capability remains untouched by the war. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a second. And will allow Moscow to replace older equipment lost in the conflict with newly manufactured items. Consequently, the war may actually serve to increase the challenge that Russia poses to U.S. interest on the continent. Both Russia and China are aggressively expanding the types of and quantities of nuclear weapons in their inventories. By the way, the Heritage Foundation said that our nukes are strong, our nuke military is strong, but our space agency is weak. Anyway, that was a PS. The increased political polarization of America has crept into the perception of the military service. The military is portrayed negatively as either a breeding ground for racist, extremist, or insurgent behavior on one hand, or weakened by woke, fragile, and social experimentations policies on the other. Both portrayals, neither of which is either true, this is what they're saying, both of which are either true or productive, undermine youth propensity to serve and therefore military recruiting. So the military is in a bad way. Watch what General Keane says. I saw him on Fox News the other day as he's warning China about China. He says, we're incentivizing President Xi to take action and we could lose. And others are saying we will not be able to do that. We'll not be able to take China on. I still think at one point, if we go against China head on, we could probably hold our own. But if North Korea comes in, which they're right there, I don't know if you know, but North Korea they have 1 or 2 million troops. They have at least the size of an army that we have. And of course, they're firing ballistic missiles. They've got the nuke and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really bad situation. Report says Sweden and the U.S. signed a military cooperation. So that's in the West there. They want NATO to come in, of course. Erdogan is saying America is not the only way out for us. If necessary, as with the S-400 systems, we are negotiating with alternatives to U.S. F-16 fighters outside the United States. We have alternatives. We reported last week that the United States Congress said, give them the F-15s or F-16s. And now Biden is saying, we're looking somewhere else. So we'll see again what this happens. You know exactly where they're looking. They're looking to Russia. Only 2 years ago, Turkey made its first anti-ship missile test. Just the other day, Turkey made an unannounced ballistic missile test fire into the Black Sea. So Turkey's pressing its agenda as well. They cannot be a ballistic threat, an ICBM threat, a nuke threat. They are not that. They won't be. But I want to remind you, they have the fourth largest army in NATO, and they have the largest in the Middle East. So they are a significant threat. They have a lot of U.S. weaponry, so they have a threat, or they are a threat. The Turkish troops deploy in Syrian town to halt inter-rebel fighting. In Syria, Monday's renewed fighting was triggered by mutual charges that both sides, and I'll talk about that in a minute, had reneged on Turkey's controlled deal, brokered deal, that saw jihadist fighters withdraw from the city of Afrin, which they seized from mainstream rebels. So Turkey is an umbrella. Remember the green, they're the green. They are the umbrella for the basically Sunni anti-Assad or anti-Syrian government fighters. And there's lots of them. HTS is the biggest one. And HTS said the other day, we're going on our own. We're not going to listen to Turkey anymore. And so Turkish troops moved in and said, you're going to do as we say, or we're going to come against you. So there's some infighting in these anti-Syrian, anti-Assad troops in the north. But at the same time, two senior officials from Hamas, remember where Hamas is, they're in Gaza, they're the terrorists in Gaza. They visited Syria's capital, Assad, on Wednesday. In the first such visit, the terrorist group was forced to leave the war-torn country a decade ago over backing armed opposition fighters. So what Russia's doing and what Turkey is trying to do as well, remember that Gordian knot, where Turkey is trying to say, listen, we need to settle things with Assad. And Turkey's in pretty tight with Hamas, and so is Russia. Hamas has been going up to see the Russians for a few times this last year. So all of this conglomeration of jihadists are really coming under this umbrella. Slowly but surely, this Gordian knot is being taken apart, and they're all going to come together at some point. It's not going to be a happy time. They're still not going to like each other, but it is breaking down, and Turkey has the power and the muscle to do it. Russia has the power and muscle to do it. Iran doesn't really want it done, but they're going to come underneath all of this, and they'll allow it to be done at some point, only to turn their swords on each other again at the end. I just thought I'd throw this in there because I didn't know this. 2 Russians flee the Ukraine draft by crossing the Bering Sea. I thought that was interesting. They landed in Alaska. So B-52 bombers, 60 warplanes fly near Russia in a joint nuke NATO exercise. I showed pictures here of Russian ships and aircraft and Chinese ships over or near Russian Alaskan territory. Those kinds of things continue to happen on both sides. Now, everybody and their brother who is smart is getting out of Russia. So oil output at the giant Exxon-led Sakhalin-1 Russian Pacific project collapsed following the U.S.'s major refusal to accept local insurance for tankers after Western insurers pulled out due to sanctions. Several industry sources told Reuters. Western insurers withdrew cover from tankers operated by state-run Sovcomflot, I think, Russia's biggest shipping group, which was sanctioned following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. Peter Zeihan, as soon as this happened, as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine and the sanctions hit, Peter Zeihan was really the first one that said the insurance is going to be a huge deal. You have to have insurance on these tankers coming out of Russia or going to Russia, and everybody, they're being shut down. There's got to be somebody to cover them. And he's saying China really doesn't have the wherewithal to do that. and nobody else wants to do that. So we're going to see again how this goes. Peter's saying that this could be one of the big things that really shuts down some of Russia's pipelines. We'll see how this happens. India owns 20% of this site, which put out 220,000 billion barrels per day. Yeah, thank you. Before August of this year, and in August, Exxon said it was in the process of transferring its 30% stake in the oil and gas project to another party. They didn't say who. That's currently a total loss of $19 million a day in just this one site. This is breaking news. Reuters reports, this was a day or two after that other report, Reuters reports that ExxonMobil said it left Russia completely after Putin expropriated its properties following 7 months of discussions over an orderly transfer of its 30% stake. So Exxon's out of Russia. I don't know if you knew, McDonald's left, a bunch of these other companies left. Some of these companies left, they sold their companies, all of their companies in Russia for $1. They just up and left. The problem is that you can't get McDonald's hamburgers. They're going to rename it and put up golden arches and rename it, but it's not going to be McDonald's anymore. So anyway, that stuff is happening in Russia. The fail of the day. Yeah, some people are saying, McDonald's?
They
Yeah.
sold their,
They'll go to Burger King.
but they received no compensation.
Some of them don't. They just up and left. Yeah, it's saying here that Putin took that property. So, I mean, I think Exxon could afford it, but that's what you do. That's what you get for doing business with a terrorist anyway. So, the fail of the day. A Russian defense minister, a ministry expert doesn't realize that he's on the air and says, just don't ask too much about these Iranian drones. We all know they are Iranian, but the authorities don't want to admit it. Now that guy's probably dead somewhere. I don't know. But he was going on, they got him off a couch and they were walking over and he told this lady, don't ask about it. And she said, okay, or something like that.
That was on a Russian
That was on, yeah. Yeah.
station or whatever.
Right. So, in 2 separate strikes, at least 10 Iranians are said killed by Ukraine as Moscow-Iran arms deepen. So, in the Donetsk area, the Iranians are launching these drones from now Russian territory, it was actually eastern Ukraine, into Ukraine. And what they do is they put in a GPS order and they shoot some of these drones. They just go straight. And if you send a bunch of them, you can't shoot them down. Other drones are you can manipulate them as they go with the use of a computer. Okay, but anyway, they've got thousands of these things up there now, and it's becoming a big deal. I heard somebody the other day say that they carry a 80 what did Keene say? He said they're not devastating as far as they can't blow up, a huge area, but they can take out significant targets. Each one of them can. So the idea is now to shoot these down. Israel has a laser that they're putting into production right now that can shoot these down and other things. So now the idea is, what are we going to do to fix this thing? Iranian drone instructors spotted. Now they're in Belarus. This was yesterday. So now Belarus, we've talked about the exercises going up there. Tens of thousands of Russians are in there. And now the Iranians are in Belarus as well, operating these drones. So Israel says it's time to send a military aid to Ukraine, says an Israeli minister amid Iran. Somebody talked to Netanyahu the other day and asked him specifically, would you send arms? And he said, I would have to look at it. We need to help them, but I need to look at the whole situation. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that. This morning it was reported that Iran is transferring not only the drones now, but ballistic missiles to Russia. Now just stop for a second. Why do they need Iranians ballistic missiles? Because they're getting short. And this is a pretty big deal. If Ukraine can hold out, it's going to put Putin in a deeper corner. Some people say he's fearing for his life right now. But again, putting him in a corner, what is he going to do when he gets there? So we're just going to have to hold out and see how this works. I was going to mention earlier when we talked about this chip issue that when these people are saying that their arms are being depleted, and then you get another report that says Russia can catch up. They have the industry to catch up, but it takes time, and it takes some of these sanctions to fall off. And so, in other words, they will be able to rebuild over some time. Ukraine, their infrastructure is being destroyed, and so that's a whole different story. There is no longer any doubt where Israel should stand in the bloody conflict, and so we'll see how this goes forward. Well, when they said that, the Russian ex-president said if Israel sends weapons to Ukraine, it will destroy Moscow's ties. And so that whole thing between Russia and Israel is a big deal. This is a mobile app you can put on your phone, and you point it, you tap on the app, and you point it at the weapon that you see. You see a cruise missile, you'll see a helicopter or airplane, and it will send a signal to the Ukrainian forces giving them the location and the direction of that target or that weapon, and they can take it out. So this is being handed out to all the people in Ukraine. I thought that was really pretty interesting. Do we want those on our apps? We want those? What are you going to point it at? Like a dog, or like there's a rabid dog or something? Having to use those things is kind of very scary. So yeah, this lady's saying that Russia is using weapons at an unsustainable rate, and everybody else is saying that. But Peter is saying they have the infrastructure. They're going to be able to work it back. It's just going to take some time. So it's really interesting, this chess game, and how long this stuff is going to play out. Meanwhile, the United States has sent the 101st Airborne to Romania, which is right next to Ukraine. 4,700 troops are in Romania right now. So we're getting toward the end here, and I just wanted to play this clip of what Netanyahu says.
First question, Kanye West this week has said, I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. Will Israel retaliate?
You know, anti-Semitism is the longest in history. It goes back thousands of years. We've dealt with bigger problems than these stupidities. But you know, the communists blame the Jews for being capitalists. The capitalists blame the Jews for being communists. You have a problem, blame the Jews. It's old stuff. It shouldn't have any place in civilized discourse, and that's the reason we established the Jewish state, so the Jewish people would have defense against these absurdities, and sometimes they're coupled with violence. We don't let that happen again.
I just want to read a few quotes from American congressmen, Congress people rather, just to show that Kanye West's comment is not really out of order with some things that are said by people in more official positions. Here's one: Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. 10 years ago, if you read that to me, I thought that would be from Hezbollah. That's an American congressperson. Another American congressperson says the reality of Israel's apartheid government, goes on to say the occupation and ethnic cleansing Palestinians live with every day. Another one says Israel targets media sources so the world can't see Palestinians being massacred. I have 3 questions for you. Are you massacring Palestinians? Are you ethnic cleansing? And are you an apartheid state?
No, no, and no. And these are ridiculous charges against the one democracy in the Middle East. The one democracy that upholds human rights, that defends freedom, and is America's best ally. So I think these people should wake up to reality, but I think that's a far too great a hope. It's not going to happen. We just have to defend ourselves against these people because they purvey lies. You ever hear the word fake news? This is fake old news. It goes back thousands of years. We're not impressed by it.
Okay. But could you become an apartheid state? The critics of Israel here in America and some in your own country talk about the fact that Israel is kind of a population time bomb, and that if 51% of Israel would become Arab, because you do have Arab citizens who are actually treated better in Israel with more rights and more freedoms than they are in their own and other Arab countries. But if 51% of Israel became Arab, then you would have to become an apartheid state. Is that something that you think about as much as your critics do?
Because I think they don't have the facts right. I mean, they're about 20% of Israel's population is Arabs, and they're really the only Arabs in the Middle East who enjoy full and equal civic rights in the Israeli democracy. And I've also made it an effort to incorporate them in the tremendous success story that is Israel, and I'm happy to see that that is happening. But the demographic balance is maintained. The most important thing is the democratic balance is maintained, because everyone has a right to be part of the Israeli democracy and the Israeli success story. I don't think it's a real issue. I think it's a bogus charge, and especially a bogus charge that's coming from the Palestinians, who oppress gays, oppress women, and are in league with Iran, which is tormenting its citizens, suppressing women there. And if I have to say anything, the place where they should direct their fire is at the Iranian regime, and they should support the brave women of Iran that are showing the world what courage is. That's where I am. I'm supporting the people of Iran and standing up for real courage.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you heard last week or so, in fact, it's been going on for about a month now, that Kanye West is coming out and saying some of these things, anti-Semitic things. He is mad at the Jews for controlling some of his businesses and some of this other stuff. And he, like he said, he woke up one night and he says, I'm going DEFCON, what do you say, 1 on the Jews. So Trump is saying, now look at Trump, kind of has to distance himself a little bit now. I've always got along with him. Trump said, I like him. I've always gotten along with him, so I don't really know what statements he made. Sometimes he'll make a statement and a lot of people think worse than he means it to be. I have read some of the things, I've listened to a couple of things that Kanye West has been saying, the language that he's been using against some of the companies that are making some of his products. Now, I'm pointing this out because do you remember him standing on the stage going to Olstein's church a couple of years ago and, quote, preaching the gospel and doing the things that he was doing? Only to come out and use this kind of language, be anti-Semitic, and do some of this stuff. And so just, again, I want to remind you that we are being directed, we are being pulled into a fight that we need to be careful to get into. We need to be careful with who we are leaguing up with. So now, the UK is back in elections of appointing a prime minister. Israel is coming up on the 1st, and the United States is coming up on the 8th. And these three nations in particular are the most, I say anti-Russian, but I would say in opposition to Russia, standing against China, trying to do the right thing, at least in some of the party. I think UK has gone much more farther down the road than we have. We're going to catch up with them. But these elections are coming up. It's very interesting. These appointments are coming up at about the same time again, and they just keep going over and over. Finally, this. I heard Biden say again today that his number one priority is to codify Roe v. Wade. That's what he said. And you've heard, you may have been listening to Fox, you may have been listening to the others, and people are saying, I don't understand why the Democrats are doubling down on abortion being the number one issue, or the LGBT rights, or all of these things. And who said it's the economy, stupid? It's the economy, stupid. When people are going broke, living paycheck to paycheck, all of those kinds of things, you just may as well run economy inflation together there. That's 44% if my math is right. 44%. You better be concentrating on them. And he is not. But you know what? We didn't think he had a chance to win last time, did we? Now, people will say he didn't. And that's fine. You can say that. I can say that. We can point to all that. The point is, he is the president. And we're going to see what God has for this nation here this November and then next in 2 more years. Real briefly, in the book of Lamentations, how the Lord in his anger, has set the daughter of Zion under a cloud. He has cast down from heaven to earth the splendor of Israel. He has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord has swallowed up without mercy all the inhabitants of Jacob. In his wrath, he has broken down the strongholds of the daughter of Judah. He has brought down to the ground in dishonor the kingdoms and his rulers. He has cut down in fierce anger all the might of Israel. He has withdrawn from them his right hand in the face of his enemy. He has burned like a flaming fire in Jacob, consuming all around. The Lord determined to lay in ruins the wall of the daughter of Zion. He stretched out the measuring lines. He did not restrain his hand from destroying he caused rampart and wall to lament. They languished together. Her gates have sunk into the ground. The golden gate is sunk into the ground today. He has ruined and broken her bars. Her kings and princes are among the nations. The law is no more, and her prophets find no vision from the Lord. The elders of the daughter of Zion sit on the ground in silence. They have thrown dust on their heads and put on sackcloth. The Lord gave full vent to his wrath. He poured out his hot anger, and he kindled a fire in Zion that consumed its foundations. The kings of the earth did not believe, nor any of the inhabitants of the world, that foe or enemy could enter the gates of Jerusalem. This was for the sins of her prophets and the iniquities of her priests, who shed in the midst of her the blood of the righteous. Rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, who dwell in the land of Uz. But to you also the cup shall pass. You shall become drunk and strip yourself bare. The punishment of your iniquity, O daughter of Zion, is accomplished. He will keep you in exile no longer, but your iniquity, O daughter of Edom, he will punish. He will uncover your sins. Jeremiah wrote this when he saw what was happening to Jerusalem. Right? And he's talking about Edom, what's going to happen to Edom. I want to remind you of Obadiah. I'm not going to read this because we're out of time. But if you read Obadiah, which is just one chapter, it says that happens in the day of the Lord. The thing that happens to Esau in the day of the Lord, and the house of Joseph is aflame during the day of the Lord. I believe that Lamentations was written as a typology. It was written because Jerusalem was prophesied to fall, and it did fall. But also it's a typology of what is going to happen in the future. And if you read Lamentations, it's actually, you almost want to cry, because you see what's going to happen to her one more time in the future as she goes into exile. But we're going to wait for the Lord. He has to do that, and he has to bring these things to pass to save us and them. Lord, we praise you and worship you, Lord God, so when we see these things, We have hope in you. We look to you for our hope and you alone. Help us to be encouraged and to understand these things as we go forward, so that we will not be taken by surprise, but also that we can comfort others who don't understand these things, Lord God. Help us to understand that these things must come about. And so, according to your word, bring them about, but also according to your word, help our hearts to be steadfast and confident in the name of the Lord our God, which is a strong tower, and those who run to it will be safe. We praise you and worship you in Jesus' precious name. Amen.